This is my recap of The Real Housewives of New York, Season 6, Episode 2, Give Up the Ghostwriter. The big story is Bookgate. Did Carole use a ghostwriter? Did Aviva use a ghostwriter? Each of them accusing the other of using a ghostwriter. There you go. We open up with Aviva and Carole having lunch, and it's an oddly aggressive conversation. And it really bothered me when I watched the first look. Why are they both so, worked up if this is their first conversation? When I saw the whole episode, there was a couple things that really stood out to me, and I now have developed a theory as to what I think happened. So it's just a theory. It works for me. It makes me watch the show and feel like everything makes sense. I will explain it at the end after I've gone through the entire episode, because I kind of need to lay the groundwork. So after the lunch, where Aviva and Carole have this conflict about who's a real writer and who's not, we see Aviva and Ramona meet up to pick out wine for Aviva's housewarming party. And it cracks me up because Aviva comes in and she's like hugging Ramona and hanging on her. And Ramona's like, okay, easy girl, back off. Now, someone pointed out on Twitter that Aviva has the same poor sense of personal space and boundaries as her father. And it blew my mind because I was like, that's so exactly true. And they're not the same people, but they both are like close talkers and stuff. And so I thought that was like a really astute observation I wanted to share. At the same time in the episode that Aviva and Ramona are talking about the lunch between Aviva and Carole, Carole is meeting up with Heather and Kristen to discuss it. And Carole's just so offended that Aviva would accuse Carole of using a ghostwriter. And it makes a lot of sense why Carole would be so offended. And that's because writing is her career. She's been a journalist and a writer for over 20 years. Now, I built my entire adult career a large part on archery, on coaching and competing. And if someone said I couldn't shoot a bow, it would really impact my career of legitimacy and all those things. Whereas if someone accused me of, say, using auto-tune, it wouldn't really affect me. I'd be like, okay, and they would need to use auto-tune on me. Anyway, so I understand why Carole's so upset, and we kind of go through the process of explaining it to Kristen, and Kristen's like, oh, she seems so nice, and she's going to make her own judgment, which is a good call. And Aviva's telling Ramona, like, oh, well, Carole used a ghostwriter, and Ramona's like, wow, that's a pretty, serious accusation, but it's like funny because they show this clip where her eyes are like, they're like these crazy eye reactions. Ramona cracks me up. Anyway, the next scene, we see Kristen meet up with Heather's family, and they kind of have like a play date. And we hear again about Jax, who is Heather's son, who was born with liver problems and needed a organ transplant. And every single time they talk about Jax and how he almost died and stuff, I tear up every single time. It's just something with kids and them being hurt or injured or ill that just really just tugs on the heartstrings. And so there you go. And then we see Aviva's new place. She's got a lovely apartment, and I always am shocked at how expensive things are in New York, or how small they are. And I feel so blessed to live someplace where I can have space to walk around and don't have to pay $1 million a square foot for it. But they're moving into a new place, and we see Harry, the infamous Harry, who used to be married to Aviva, and they have a son together. But he has also dated Luann and Sonja, and for some reason that makes me happy. I think it's because we all know logically that housewives are cast, and they're not really friends. But when you have someone who's now dated half of the cast long before the show, it kind of does give it this legitimacy that there is this social group that exists, that they're all a part of, that I'm not a part of. So that cracks me up. For some reason, I really like Harry, and I like the whole storyline. And he is going on a date with Sonja, and we'll get to that later. And then we see Sonja and Kristen having, spray tans and talking and getting to know each other. And then we see Aviva and Heather have mani-pedis, and Aviva's going to lay the truth on Heather about how Carole used a ghostwriter, and Heather just shuts that down. She doesn't want to hear it. She just basically denies it all and just moves that on. And then we see Harry and Sonja's date, and this made me so happy. I love them together. I want them to work out and get married and have their own spin-off. I think they are such a good match. Their flirting is hilarious, and I do really want Sonja to have a happily ever after. She is, she's not always right. I mean, I've totally disagreed with her in the past, and I've disagreed with things that she said. But she's a good person in the sense that she doesn't really seem to have malice. She doesn't try to be mean to people. She forgives really easy, and she kind of has this, I don't know, this, I almost say innocence that she kind of goes through, and she's just really funny and down to earth. And I do want her to be happy, and I hope Harry does that for her, because I would love to see that. And the last big scene is Aviva's housewarming party, where Carole confronts her on saying that she is a ghostwriter, because she kind of asked Carole at the lunch if she had a ghostwriter, but since then she's been going around telling everyone that she heard for a fact that Carole had a ghostwriter, and that the publishing house that Aviva has turned down Carole's book and had to have this specific guy rewrite it, who's listed, by the way, in Carole's book as being an editor. And they get into it, and Aviva's been saying, of course Carole uses a ghostwriter. It takes a village to write a book, and that's just how it works. And she said that repeatedly. And Carole and her get into a fight, and Carole said something that kind of I really caught and was like, what? Because Carole said very specifically, you've gone through 3 ghostwriters and your publishing house doesn't even want to work with you. Now that is not a random accusation. I could see if she randomly accused Aviva of using a ghostwriter because she didn't think she would be a good enough writer. But saying that you've had 3 ghostwriters, that's not something you make up. That's something that you've heard somewhere else. So this is my theory of what happened. My theory, and there's a lot of room in it, but I feel like a lot of the key elements are there. Someone came to Aviva. She's a housewife. She has an interesting story. Came to her from a publishing house and said, Aviva, we'd like to write a book with you. And I don't know exactly how it happened. Maybe Aviva wrote a bunch of stuff and sent it to them, and then they had someone work on it and send it back to her. Or maybe they flat out told her we're going to use a ghostwriter or something. But at some point, I think they said, hey, everybody does this. Everybody uses, they call them ghostwriters, but really they're just helping you out. And, maybe she fought against it and said, no, I don't want to do it that way. Or maybe she just believed from the beginning that everybody does this way. But at some point, someone said to her, don't worry about it. Everyone does this. Hey, by the way, I actually saw Carole's book when she first submitted it, and it needed so much working over. The guy who's listed as her editor, he was actually her ghostwriter. He fixed the whole thing. It must have taken 6, 7, 8 months. And that's what I think happened, and I think that's what happened. Aviva heard that, and she goes, oh, everybody does this. Carole does this. Everybody does this. And that's why she keeps saying, it takes a village to write a book. I think someone said that to her, and she repeated it. Now, I don't actually think Carole used a ghostwriter, but I think someone did tell Aviva that she did. Or they bent the truth, or they, tried to stroke Aviva's ego or something like that. And I think she bought it. I mean, there's a lot of wiggle room in describing what an editor does, and I could see someone pushing the description so much that Aviva really believes that Carole had a ghostwriter. Now, the thing is, I believe that someone at some point before that first meeting told Carole, yeah, Aviva's book, she had a ghostwriter. She's actually had 3. She fired 3 of them already, and her publishing house is sick of her, and she's this real diva or something like that. So when you go into this first meeting where Aviva's telling everyone she's an author, just like Carole, I think Carole came into the conversation with a real chip on her shoulder because she knew that Aviva didn't write Aviva's memoir the way that Carole wrote hers. And so she came into it really aggressive. And I think Aviva came into it really aggressive because she wanted Carole to admit that Aviva was as much a writer as Carole. I don't think either of them are right, in the sense that I think I would have given each of them different advice on how to handle it. But that's my opinion as to how I think this all went down. I have no proof. And if you have an alternate theory, feel free to throw it at me and we can chat. Okay, I'll see you guys.